categorical data.
Okay, so if we are looking at that first standard that it asks you to create a two-way table, right down below here, this is a two-way table. So if you are looking at this information right here is a two-way table. The bivariate simply means that you have two variables. Okay, so when you read something that says bivariate, it just means two variables. So put this in your notes. You're writing this down. So we have been working with two variable ones. Our y and our x, our equations that were linear usually have two variables, right? We can write clear summaries of the data displayed in our table. We're going to be working on that. We're going to be able to calculate percentages and the relative frequencies. We are going to do it three different ways. We're going to do it by the row. Row means, if you're thinking about a row, you are going across. If you think of a column, that's like in front of your house, columns go up and down, okay? And then what's going to be our total or for the whole table. So you were going to be asked to calculate these three different types of what's called relative frequency, which are really just looking at our percentages. And then we have to kind of look at, is it a joint, is it marginal, or is it a conditional distribution, which is when we start looking at our bar chart. So looking at different ways of displaying data. So if you are looking at this one, if I asked you for how many people like snowmobile and skateboards. So if we're looking at how many people like snowmobiles and like skateboards, how many would you tell me? 80. Okay, right, if we're looking at that. How many people, write this in your notes, how many people total surveyed here? Okay, so if we are looking at the total that were surveyed, we'd have 160 people. If I asked you how many people don't like either? Our don't like either category is we're going down and we have these. And now what usually is going to happen, and as we watch this video that you're going to see, is they're going to give you in a table some information, and they will usually give you like 4 categories, or 4 of these to fill in, and then you'll fill in the rest. So if I would know that this is 160, this was 10, and this was 80, I would need one more piece of information in order to fill in my table. Like I might have need to know that the total number of people that I surveyed that liked skateboards was 125. And if I have these 4 pieces of information, I can take 160 and subtract 125, and that gives me 35, right? If I know that this is 35 and I know 10, I know 35 minus 10 could give me the 25. If I know this is 125 that I have for my total, and I know this is 80, I can take 125 minus 80 and I get the 45. So once I have 4 pieces of information in a table, I usually can find all the rest of them by doing some addition or subtraction. Okay? So as we read this two-way table, making sure you're understanding, it says in this one they surveyed 50 adults. That's in our total. They had them pick their favorite leisure activity, dancing, sports, or TV. So I would like you to just kind of answer these questions. Just kind of look through them and put down some numbers, especially for the first 3, and then we'll kind of go from there. So for those first 3, what are we looking at as you look at that table that you could fill in? So Tanya, how many women like sports? 6. Abby, if we're looking at how many men like to watch TV? 8. Ryan, how many people like dance? 18. The next question is asking us, if we look at the totals for our 3 activities, 18, 16, and 16, which one's the most popular? probably dance, right? But not by much. And it says, are they pretty equal? Yeah, they're pretty equal. Are they pretty equal amongst men and women? Or is there a difference? Is there a difference between what men like and women like? Men generally like which two things the most? Their highest one was sports, right? And TV. Pretty close. How about for women from this survey? Definite dance. Now, this is why when you see information presented, it's really important that you understand statistics, because someone could come out and say, you know what? Dance, sports, and TV, men and women like them the same. That is the most popular one is dance, right? Can you get that information from this table? Yeah, someone could pull that out and give you and say, make that statement, right? So as we've been watching Channel 1 News lately, right, there's been a lot of the stories of false information and how people get statistics are manipulated all the time. They might be by advertisers, it might be by someone that wants you to choose their product, it might be because someone wants you to influence your vote or how you're thinking on stuff. So just by having statistics, you need to make sure you're understanding how we use statistics to best serve us. So it says all of these numbers that we are looking at, and we're going to be doing some different things with some different projects in this unit as we look at statistics. It says all of these numbers in the tables are considered to be our frequencies, meaning they just tell us how many people fit into each of the categories. So these numbers here, when we look at those, are simply our frequencies. It tells us that there are 10, means that we surveyed 10 men that like sports, right? They're not a percentage, and they're not telling us, and they're just telling us the number of people. So sometimes you might have earlier in your education did tally marks, like when you were surveying people, right? And then you put that tally and you wrote it as a number. That's kind of just what these are. They're simply frequencies, okay? On the top of the next page, we are looking at the vocabulary here. And when we look at this vocabulary, we have the region here in red, and then we have this on the outside. So when we are looking at this information, the main part of our table is often going to be referred to as joint frequencies, meaning we're looking at both those two. And then as you fill in the other one, the stuff going around it are considered to be our marginal frequencies. So we saw that vocabulary in our I can statements at the top. You just want to write those at the same time. So when you are looking at these, the joint frequency versus our marginal frequency, okay? And now as we read here, it says, well, if we look to the right, this two-way table. So two-way meaning we are comparing men and women to our choices in this case. They surveyed 50 adults, 20 men and 30 women. Because the entries in the table are frequency counts, the table is considered a frequency table. This is different than what's called a relative frequency table. We're going to talk about that also, okay? So if we looked only at the marginal frequencies, that's our total row. We might conclude that the three activities are roughly equal, which is kind of what we thought. Yet if we look at the joint frequencies, that's the ones on the inside here, we can see that women prefer dance and men prefer, in this case, theirs is kind of much more equal between sports and TV, but men really, in this survey, had little or no interest in dance, right? Yeah.
So what if you had, wouldn't it be a different answer if they had interviewed equal men and women?
Could be. Right? So they didn't even interview. So that would be something that we're looking at, that might change this quite a bit. If we would have had more men, that we might have had this being up at maybe 15 and, you know, something else instead of where it was. But this is what the information that they gave us. So that's kind of what we're going to look at, and definitely, I would think that it might be changed. Could it also be changed depending on where you're interviewing people? If you were up at the North Dance Competition last weekend and you were asking people, which do you prefer? That would make sense, right? 16 more preferring dance than sports or TV if you're asking people. They were at a dance competition. I'm thinking that they like to watch dance, right? Even if it's not just their kids in it. So, I mean, all of this stuff, that's why when you take surveys and you look at information, it's really important to look at all the data with it. So, I do not want you to start filling in your frequency tables that some of you are going ahead and doing until you see where we're at with this one, because it's kind of important that we kind of go along the same way with this. So, this video, as you're watching it, I know that the voice of the person in the video can be a little jarring at times, and possibly my voice is if you've ever had to listen or watch our videos from class. But bear with it, it's 3 minutes, and she's going to kind of go through this problem, and as she goes through it and sets it up, I want you to set yours up exactly the same way. Does it have to always be this way when we look at the surveys or at the questions like this? No. But as you look at this one, I just want you to be aware that her voice sometimes comes across as really sharp. And so we're looking at this situation. And you can notice from here that how she starts to set it up, and she's going to read through it.
Got it, practice.
Oh, yeah.
A survey was conducted to see if students get an allowance and if they have to do household chores. Of the 12 students that received no allowance, 5 of them have no chores. There are 17 students who do chores and
This is
receive
the problem
an
that you
allowance,
have.
while 6 students get an allowance without doing any chores. Construct a two-way table to display this data. Hit pause if you want to try this problem.
I don't want you to try it. I want you to just go through it.
If you get stuck, or if you would like to see me do it, press play again. Now watch me do it. The first thing we need to do here is to label our table.
Label
We know
it the
that
same
students
way.
can either have chores or have no chores. We will total these columns here of the chores and no chores. Then we know that all the students either get an allowance or they get no allowance. And we will total those at the end of the row. So let's look and see what information we have. We know that we have 12 students that receive no allowance. So that means the total number of students receiving no allowance, there are 12 of them.
So put it back
Of
in the
those
12 where
12,
they have their.
5 have no chores. So we go to the no chores, no allowance. That goes
This
there.
information gives you
There
4
are
things to fill in.
17 students who do chores and receive allowance. So this goes here. They do chores, they get an allowance. While 6 students get an allowance without doing any chores. So that means they get an allowance, but they do no chores. Construct a two-way table to display this data. So we have the basis of our two-way table, but now we have some blanks that we're going to need to fill out. First of all, we know if we add the 17 and the 6, that would be our total here of 23. Here we know we have to add some number to.
So as we are filling ours in, and we are looking at that information that they gave us, we want, as you are looking at that, so do some subtraction, right? So we have our chores and no chores. And this was the total. And our piece of information that we were looking at was we had our allowance. So if I am starting to fill in, Brooke, which one do you want to try and fill in first from the information that they gave us? So we had the 12, right? We had, of the 12, we had 5 with no chores. We had 17 that who do chores. And our other number was 6 that get no allowance. Which one do you want to fill in first?
17 goes with chores and allowance.
17 is chores and allowance. Oops, sorry, my fault. And 6 goes here. Which one do you want to fill in first, Rick?
No.
No allowance. How much? 7. 12 minus 5, right? 7. Sam, next one. Samantha, what are you going to look at?
The total.
Total of where?
Oh wait, actually the total for no chores.
Total no chores, which is
11.
11. Ryan, what else?
The total amount of people who had chores,
Okay. Is
24.
24. So next, which one, Tanya? Total with allowance? 23. Both ways, if I'm adding my totals, should give us 35, right? So once they give you one piece of information, you are trying to fill in what you know, okay? Now, sometimes like on the top of the next page, I give you the categories in your homework. Sometimes you'll see the two-way tables and they won't have this word total, so you will want to add that in. So, 8 people have no dog. I need to think that that is my total down here. 8 people with no dog, right? Of those 8, 2 have no cat. So now I go to no cat, and I fill that piece of information in. There are 4 people with a cat and a dog. 4 people with a cat and a dog. While 3 students had a dog and no cat. 3 people have a dog, no cat. Please fill in the missing info. And again, you're mostly just doing addition and subtraction to fill those in, okay? So Becca, which one do you want to do first?
Total of no cat.
Total no cat is? 5. Owen, which one do you want to do next?
Total dog.
Yep.
And it's
7. Joey, which one next? Total. We surveyed how many people? 15. Which then means if I'm looking at this, Hannah, what do I know about the total people that are just cat? How many people totally are just cat?
20.
Can't be.
Oh, 10.
Gotta be 10. I'm taking 15 and subtracting it. Which means if we have a cat and no dog, we should have 6. 6 plus 2 gives us 8. 4 plus 6 gives us 10. So always my table needs to work. So please take a look and try this next one right now. 25, total, right? That's how many people we surveyed. Okay. Check with your shoulder partner. Fill yours in. So you read it, 25. Otto, where'd you put 14?
In the total
Total knows 14. Where am I putting the 7 down as I look at that one, Devin?
The no foreign language and no sports.
So here, or here?
Middle.
The middle one. 7 do not take a foreign language. I think total no foreign language is what we want to be thinking instead. Is 7. Okay. So our last 6, Abby, where are you putting it?
In the foreign language and sport.
Foreign language and sports. So we now have 4 pieces of information we are finding. 25 minus 14 gives us 11.
It says 14 students do not participate in sports and 7 do not take a foreign language. So wouldn't it be the middle column?
Yeah, be the
14 students do not participate in sports. Done. 7 do not participate in foreign language. 7 total students have no foreign language. None. Okay? So, as we are looking at this, so the 6 in this case no foreign language. 11 minus 6 gives us 5. To get 7 total, 7 minus 5 gives us 2. 14 minus 2 means 12 people are in a foreign language but do not play sports. And this has to be 18. And 18 plus 7 gives us 25. 14 plus 11 gives us 25. And so you can always kind of double check in that way as you are reading those. So if we said how many students take a foreign language and play no sports, our answer would be 12 people. Okay? So the next part that we are looking at, and your homework, you have 2 things. So that workbook that I gave you has all the worksheets that we are looking at. This is in page 760. And in order to do just a little bit of this, one of the things they talk about is they look at here and they say there was 103 tickets sold, so 78, they change them to percentages, right? How did they get this as a percent? That's what we want to look at in your notes as that next part that's called the relative frequency. So we're going to look just a little at this. We're going to talk about this just a little for this one page of notes at the bottom. And then when you come in on Monday, we will talk about how we calculate this a little more, okay? So what is relative frequency? So this table up here shows 2-way frequencies. It's how many people out of a total of 50 in our survey. Relative frequency is a proportion. So if you remember doing proportions, that just really means you're going to look at the sub count. In this case, the men that like dance out of maybe 50, right? So notice in this table down here that they have 100% here. This is 1. They divided each thing, and this is relative frequency of the total table. Okay, so the whole table, this is the relative frequency of our total. So total relative frequency, when they talk about that, versus you might be asked to find it by the rows or by the columns. It says each type has a different way of contributing to our understanding. Computing the relative frequency for the whole is meaning we're looking at the total number of people we surveyed, which is 50. So you divide each number in this table up here by 50. So how did they come up with 0.4 or 4% of the men like dance? Because they took 2 and they divided it by 50. 2 divided by 50 is going to be 0.04. Here they are taking 10 and dividing it by 50. That's how they got 20% or 0.2. This is 8 divided by 50. And they're taking every number in the table up here and they are simply calculating it by dividing by 50. So in your homework in the on page 760, they're kind of asking you to compute the total relative frequency. Someone said, well, how can you can divide on your calculator 2 by 50, but if this is 50, 50 times 2 is 100, so 0.04, that'd be 4 over 100, right? If we're looking at this one, this is 16 out of 50, 16 divided by 50. If I want a denominator of 100, I'd have 32 over 100.32. So you can compute this either way, right? You can divide, or you can get 100 as your denominator. And that's how they found this information. So we're not going to go any further than that today. In this table, they give you this 2 pieces of information on page 760. It says there was 103, so if we look at this and we add our total. So I want you to turn to your page 760, or as you're looking at this, or take out your paper. This one is in your textbook. You will have textbooks assignments with this. It's just that any worksheet that I hand out are in the workbook. There is a workbook that on Monday we're going to continue doing, and it's kind of a few pages long. And if you wanted, you could probably start with the first page of looking at some of these, because they're just asking you some numbers and to fill in. So this is in your workbook. None of this is due the 760 or the E1 in your workbook till Tuesday of next week, okay? I really want you to study and prepare for your test. But when you look at this page, I want you, when you're doing your homework, to fill in and put this as the total. So it says, the men who purchased the tickets to martial arts, to all men. They are asking you to write a ratio and percent for each one, right? So, if we are looking first at our ratio, our total they told us was 103. So this is the 103 people. Can you fill in the rest of these totals, like the movie or if we're looking at this? So it says men who purchased the tickets to all men. So men that purchased the tickets, if we're looking, 12, to all men. You need this total, right? So you gotta compute this total so that when you figure out question number 1, you are trying to take 12 and dividing it by the total over here. Not to the total out of 103, right? You're gonna write it first as a ratio, then a percent. This one says the ones that pick this, to all that purchase tickets. All that purchase tickets. So you gotta make sure you show me what you're dividing by. I don't want just the percentage. I want you to show me how you computed it. And again, this will not be due until